Hello and welcome back to the Indie Hour. I'm your host Ryan, and I'm here to bring you the latest and greatest within the indie and alternative genre. There's a lot of great music to get to this week, so let's get into the new music. Starting off with what I promised you last week, which is my first album review on this show. And we are starting off with none other than Car Seat Headrest, who released a new album on Friday titled Making a Door Less Open. I was honestly really looking forward to this album, as in my opinion, Car Seat Headrest has always delivered really powerful and personal music. Now, I'm going to break this album down into basically three parts. So that's going to be what I enjoyed about the album, what I really didn't like about the album, and my overall impressions, and then a final rating of the album. So to start off with what I enjoyed about this record is what I kind of just mentioned about how deep and introspective these songs can get on a Car Seat Headrest album. I definitely think you get this with their latest release. I thought the storytelling was really well done for this record. The lyrics as well on some songs were so emotionally driven. Some specific lines that stood out to me on this record would have to be, to me at least, every laugh is a path worth following, or if you could be proud of anything you've done, what would it be? Some really empowering stuff in my opinion. So all that being said, getting into what I did not enjoy about this album, it's really just one big thing, and it's the overall sound of this album. It's messy, but not in a good way. The overall sound feels overproduced during some songs. I think you can hear this best with the final song on the album. Now, I should say after I wrote my initial notes on the album, I did have to see what the band and maybe some other interviewers and outlets had to say, and specifically the music magazine Pitchfork had an interview where the band talked about wanting to experiment on this album and take it in a different direction, sort of away from their indie roots. So I just wanted to add that little part into my overall criticism of the overall sound of the album. That being said, my overall impression and I guess final score for this album is going to be a 5.5 out of 10. I think there's some great songs on this record, but overall I can't say this is the most enjoyable record because some of the complaints I have with how the overall record sounds. That being said, to start off the playlist for this week, I did include two of my favorite songs from this record, which are What's With You Lately, which is this really great acoustic song, and Life with Missing, which has the lyrics I talked about liking earlier in this review. Car Seat Headrest, of course, is not the only big release that we got this week. We did, of course, get the Chicano Batman release, much anticipated album, Invisible People, from them. I won't do a whole review on this album, just give it a quick thumbs up, say that I did in fact enjoy this album. I think it's one of the best songs off of this one specifically. I Know It, which I think is the best representation of the sound of the album. I'm really hoping Chicano Batman starts touring with this new material when bands can start touring again, because I think a lot of these songs could translate really well to a live experience. So for this next one, I was debating on whether or not to include it, because it definitely does not fall under the indie or alternative umbrella, but it is one of my favorite bands, and I thought I'd give you a taste of something outside of the indie and alternative genre, so that I really enjoy and think is noteworthy. I'm of course talking about my favorite modern punk band, which is Days and Days, as in days like days of the week, and dazed as in Dazed and Confused. So they released their new album called Show Me the Blueprints, just came out. Been absolutely rocking out to this one a lot. Of their stuff can be heavier, but the song that I picked out I think has the closest indie sound to it, which would be the song called Advice. Now, the last major release I want to talk about comes from one of the strongest female groups out there, which is, of course, Haim. They put out a new song called I Know Alone. I know despite the name of the track, it's a rather upbeat song and has a particular awesome solo around the middle of the song where it has this really fascinating key section that I think adds a ton to the overall track. Even though I only talked about a couple releases this week. I did wanted to add to the playlist, including, there's this really fun track from Glass Animals that I included inside the playlist. And I wanted to specifically include a song from each of Chicano Batman and Days and Days, as these are artists I feel like not a ton of people know about, more so Chicano Batman, but I really wanted to include them to give them a little more exposure. So that being said, as always, I put the playlist down below in the description where you can check out the playlist, the whole playlist of all the songs I talked about and more. So that being said, let me know too if you had a chance to listen to the newest Car Seat Headrest album, if you agree with what I had to say, if you disagree, if you think there's something big that I'm missing with this album, please let me know in the comments. As always, I would love to know what everyone else is listening to during this time. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's installment of the Indie Hour. Once again, I have been your host, Ryan, and until next time, make sure to take it easy.